What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPaPa, and I'm so excited about everything that's going on in the Sun and Moon space. And you might not be hearing that a lot out there. A lot of people are focused on alt arts. A lot of people are focused on what's going on, in Scarlet and Violet. A lot of Scarlet and Violet cards are getting really, really hot. But one of the things that I truly enjoy doing is when everybody is going in one direction, I like looking in an opposite direction to see if there's any really cool opportunities out there. And we have been doing that and talking about that here in the Sun and Moon space for really, I don't know, for a couple months now. It's been fascinating to see how kind of the singles prices have been changing and how the booster box prices have been moving. And we've been able to use a lot of these data and a lot of these trend analysis and just a lot of our experience from looking at these types of numbers for as long as we have to give us some types of indications that certain cards might be hitting a bit of a support point or certain cards are poised for a little bit of a breakout. And we're going to see some of that come to pass this video. And when we talk about those cards, it's not intended to be braggadocious or anything like that, but its intention is we are trying to identify patterns. In the grand scheme of things, this channel has only been around for, I don't know, a year and a half, a year and 8 months at this point. So we still have a lot of learnings to do. We still have a lot of data to gather. We still have a lot of trends to try and analyze, but I love looking at stuff like this, and especially in an era like the Sun and Moon, where the Sun and Moon, there is no more reprints, there is no more restocks, right? Like a lot of these cards have really low populations, really low gem rates. So it's fascinating for me to take a lot of learnings away from this era and provide them to you all. And especially, I get so excited when we see things that move in the direction that we think they are. So we're gonna see a lot of that in this video, but if you've never seen this video series before, it's a really cool one. So I started back in September of last year, and I take the top 20 singles cards from all of the sets in Sun and Moon. I do it for Sword and Shield, Scarlet and Violet, and XY as well. But in this one, we're looking at Sun and Moon. So the top 20 singles cards from all the sets that had booster boxes. And I sprite their prices down, right? And I put them into an Excel sheet, and we track how those prices move month over month. And I always start off with this view right here, which is an aggregate of all of those cards' prices. So the total value of the top 20 singles cards from every single Sun and Moon set with a booster box back in September of 23 was $12,604. And then you'll see that, hey, listen, in October, it went down to $12,496. Then in November, down. December, down a lot. January, down a lot again. February, we started to see it drop, but hey, not as much. It went from negative 3.17% to negative 2%. Then in March, it went to negative 0.54%. And that's when we started to say, hey, listen, are the things kind of changing? Like, are we finding a lot of these cards are now reaching a support point, right? So when the cards drop in value over a period of time, are they starting to get that support line that we've talked about a lot on this channel? And that can be an indication of when cards start to kind of make a turn and go up in price. Then from March to April, it was up 0.14%, and we started getting really excited. We started calling out a bunch of different cards. We started to really see those support lines form. And then April to May, the total value was up 0.58%. And then May to June, where we sit now, guess what? We saw another month of continued growth in the growth month over month, right? So it went from 0.58% to positive 2.89%. And that is incredibly exciting. Now, if you've watched the Sword and Shield version of this as well, you have seen the same thing, except the Sword and Shield turn, like the increase in the top 20 singles cards, happened much earlier because alt arts got hot a couple months ago, right? So we've seen the same pattern in Sword and Shield. It just happened earlier on. So my question and what I'm really thinking about here at this point is, okay, a lot of these alt arts are incredibly high. I think a lot of leveled up collectors out there are thinking, okay, it might be time to pump the brakes on some of these alt arts a little bit. So what do? They look for value in other parts of the places, right? They look for value in other areas of the Pokemon collecting space. And Sun and Moon has some incredible artwork. Those tag team cards are next level, right? And a lot of them have been under pressure for a long time. So I'm thinking that a lot of people are kind of backing off the alt arts and they're picking up some of these cards at 1 year lows. We've been talking about so many of these cards that have been at 1 year lows for the last couple months. And now guess what? We're starting to see them turn up. However, I will say this, if you look, the total value of the top 20 singles cards from September until now, right? Okay, that says May, but it should say June. I just forgot to change the wording on it. But from September till now is still down 8.8%. So even if you buy in now, even though you're starting to see the tail up there on that graph, right? You're starting to see these top 20 singles cards gain a little ground. Well, guess what? You are still buying in at really low valuations compared to where it was in September of last year, and really compared to where it was in August of last year as well, because August Sun and Moon singles got really hot. So don't feel like you've missed the boat, but instead get your glasses on, get your goggles on, and go dive in for some really cool opportunities here in the Sun and Moon space, and hopefully I can help you identify some of them. Now, Before we get into the rest of the video, we're going to talk about booster boxes next, and then we're going to look at the individual sets and some individual cards. I just wanted to say, if this type of level up, data dive, kind of look at the Pokemon space gets you excited, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We have an amazing community. We'd love for you to be a part of it, and we do fun stuff like this all the time. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. I'm on vacation, so I won't respond to them immediately, but I promise I will read them and I will get to them ASAP. So with that being said, let's take a look at the booster boxes. Now, the thing that I love about the Sun and Moon booster boxes is, remember, almost all these booster boxes are at the $600 price point right now, like even Lost Origin, Celestial Storm, you know, all of them, right? Like they're all pretty much at that $600 point or more. And what I'm taking from this is how sealed product moves, even though it's already at that really high valuation, because guess what? Sword and Shield, a lot of these booster boxes probably have a lot of room to run. So I can take some learnings from the Sun and Moon, even though the print runs were probably a lot smaller, even though that, you know, the excitement around Sun and Moon back then wasn't quite what it is now. I think that the desire to keep things sealed in the Sun and Moon era isn't the same as it is now. I think everybody's keeping a lot of stuff sealed now, so in the future there's going to be more population. You got to take all that into consideration. But at the end of the day, this is still a great representation of how some older stuff has moved from a sealed perspective month over month. And you'll see that there's a lot of ups and downs, and you know, there's some big sets in here. Team Up can sway these numbers one way or the other. But overall, again, I didn't change from May to June, which I should have, stupid me. But if you look from September till now, you're still up 14.1%. Even with the changes, even with the ups and the downs and the lefts and the rights, you're still up 14.1%, which is really incredible. Because remember, the singles cards that we just looked at on the last slide are down 8.8%, and versus the booster boxes, which are up 14.1%. A lot of us know that, hey, listen, sealed product is pretty safe. It always goes up over time. They're always being ripped, so the population's always dwindling, but it's really cool to see it in a graphical representation and to talk about it like this. So now let's start looking at some of these individual sets and some of these individual cards. So starting off with Cosmic Eclipse and Unified Minds. Cosmic Eclipse booster boxes are getting near $900. They're up to $883 right there, which is really, really crazy. Now, Cosmic Eclipse and Unified Minds over the last 7 months have been an incredible turnaround story, right? So 7 months ago, the value of the top 20 singles cards in Cosmic Eclipse was down 4% month over month. Then it was down 6%, then 5%, then 2%, then down 1%, and then flat. And then this month we see that big turnaround, positive 5%. Now, what you're seeing here is you're not seeing a lot of those price gains at the very top. Matter of fact, you're seeing none. Like all three of those cards are slightly down month over month. However, what you're seeing is a lot of the ones down below that. That's where you're seeing some gains and some pretty robust gains. You'll see plus 10%, 11%, 19%, 22%, some really solid gains outside of the top three in Cosmic Eclipse. And then Unified Minds just absolutely balled out. Unified Minds is green across the board except for one little card that is down 2% month over month, but it's really exciting to see that there's strength really top to bottom in Unified Minds. I've said this on the channel a lot. Unified Minds is my favorite set from the Sun and Moon era. I love all the cards in there. I think it's really awesome, and for whatever reason, it just speaks to me. So it's interesting to see Unified Minds. And I have it called out on the left-hand side there, but it followed a very similar path to Cosmic Eclipse, right? 7 months ago, it was down 4%, then it was down 7%, then down 3, then down 3, then flat, then flat. It's really been trying to work its way up. And finally, this month, it's up 4% month over month. So it's interesting to see this. It's exciting to see the bleeding start to kind of phase out a little bit. And we're going to talk about one of the cards from these sets that we have been talking about for the last couple months, saying, hey, listen, it's a beautiful card. It's a chase card. It's a stunner. It's got some big name Pokemon on it. It feels like it's poised for a breakout, and that's this one right here. It's got the Mega Sableye and Tyranitar. So we've watched this card work its way down, hit a 1-year low about a month and a half ago, and then it started to flatten out. And when we talk about that flattening out, that's what I consider a support line, and that's a technical term that's used in regular stock market investing. But that's actually one of the few stock terms that I feel like can kind of come over into the Pokemon space as well. And so a card will reach a certain point where the price is so low that the market just buys it up. And usually, as weird as this may sound, usually it's kind of round numbers. We'll talk about that a lot later on in this video, but for whatever reason, $100, $150, $200, a lot of times it can be right in that space. So this card really got down to about, I don't know, $120 range, and it was holding that line for quite a while, and now we're starting to see it kick back up. Is it going to be able to continue that trend? Is this just a momentary blip on the radar where it starts to gain a couple dollars? I don't know. We'll have to look at it next month. But again, this is amazing art. And Tyranitar is all kinds of fire right now thanks to that Sleepy T-Tar from the Sword and Shield era, right? So I love this card. I think the artwork is fire. I think it's really interesting to see that after talking about it for a couple months, we're starting to see the price edge up a little bit. Now, is it going to continue? I'll let you know next month. Going to be really fun to keep an eye on this one. So the next one's right here. We have Unbroken Bonds and Team Up. And Team Up is obviously the biggest and the baddest of the Sun and Moon era, right? Like, it's just an incredible set, super short printed. Booster boxes are going for almost $2,400 right now. Crazy to think of a box that is that new that is going for that amount of money, but guess what? It changes hands all the time. I've started doing an auction video here on this channel where I look at the, the things that are selling on eBay and what prices they're going for, and Team Up booster boxes are selling with a good clip of regularity. So it's interesting to see that people are paying that. Now, these sets have been performing pretty well for the last couple months, so it's nice to see the overall top 20 for Unbroken Bonds, again, up 3% month over month, and Team Up 3% again month over month. And what's interesting to me is we see some continued strength here at the top, right? I love to see this. So when you look at the top 3 cards from each of these sets, okay, 2 of them are up in each one. And I will say this, the Lovebirds card, which is up at $785, that being down 1%, pretty close to flat. If you watched this video series last month, we talked about how while a lot of the other chase cards had been under some pressure and were finding support lines, the Lovebirds card was actually continuing to go up. And I think that's happening in part because the Moonbreon's performing so well, right? The Moonbreon from Evolving Skies, that's the biggest and the baddest of the Sword and Shield era. Nothing seems to be able to slow that down. So I think people are looking to the Sun and Moon era, and obviously the Lovebirds card from Team Up is the big chase card from that era. So I think organically that's getting a little bit of a lift. Now, it's really, really cool to see. Again, same thing as those previous videos. We're starting to see some strength beyond the top 5, beyond the top 10. We've done a ton of data dives and research on this channel where we look at cards outside of the top 3, and they have a tendency to be able to outperform at times some of the cards at the top because they start off so much lower and people find love in them, and then all of a sudden they pop up $5 or $6, and from a percentage return standpoint, you can find some really good gains in there. So it's exciting to see that the gains are not only in the top big cards, but also working its way back down. So the card that we're going to look at here, another one we've talked about for a very, very long time, is this tag team, the Gardevoir and Sylveon card, right? This is the big chase card, and you look at it, it had been all the way up at $230, dropped like a rock. In February of this year, it was all the way down to about $175, and it has been flatlined there. Month over month over month, we've been saying, listen, people are overlooking this card. I'm telling you right now, it's got some go juice in it. We just had a feeling it was going to finally turn that corner, and it did, and we're seeing it pop off. Again, you never know where the bottom is. I'll never tell you we're at the bottom or this is the time to buy. That's not for me to decide. That's for you. But we will find these support lines, and it is interesting to see it shoot up like this. Will it be able to hold on to the gains? Who knows? We'll have to check back in another couple months, but it is interesting to see that this is one of the things we've been talking about for a long time, and to see it shoot up like this. So that's really, really exciting. Now, the next one's right here. We got Lost Thunder and Celestial Storm, and man, Celestial Storm from a booster box perspective has defied all logic in my mind. Like, the booster box, if you were to trend line out the way that booster box price has gone over the last 18 months, it would absolutely blow your mind if you're a data nerd like me. It has been upward and to the right in the most steady eddy pattern you could imagine. So seeing it only up 1% month over month kind of makes me happy. I'm happy to see it slow down a little bit. It had to happen at some point, and we are finally there. And what it took was, you'll see that now the top 20 singles cards is actually down 1% month over month. You don't see a lot of that in this video because Sun and Moon as a whole is performing really well. So we're starting to see those slow down just a little bit, right? We're starting to see those top 20 singles cards in Celestial Storm slow down a little bit. We're starting to see the booster box growth slow down a little bit. And so that's another one that's really interesting to look at. Now, Lost Thunder is an interesting set. I've said it before, I'm not a huge fan of the whole Lost Thunder lineup. I'm a big fan of the chase card at the top, which we're going to look at here in just a minute, because that's another card we've been talking about for a long time. But guess what? There's not a single card in Lost Origin in the top 20 that's under $10. That's really, really cool. The other thing I love about this is see the strength at the top. I talk about that a lot. I love seeing strength at the top, and you'll see that all 3 of the cards at the very top of Lost Thunder are up 2% month over month. Not a big gain, but again, up is up. And again, we're talking about a month over month price change here, right? Like, you're not going to see, unless you're in Sword and Shield All Art space, you're not going to see, nor should you see these incredible price spikes month over month. So here's the card that we were talking about, that Rainbow Lugia chase card from Lost Thunder, and another one where we talked about how back in February it hit that flat line. It really started to find a lot of support in the 140, 145 range. And now recently we've started to see it pop up. It's up to $152. Now, unlike the one we just looked at, which seemed to be continuing to go up, this does look like to be it's flattening a little bit. Rainbow cards aren't necessarily the most popular ones out there. So it'll be interesting to see if this can hold on to it. But again, this was just another card that we've talked about for a long time, saying, hey, we feel like it's got some go juice in it because it's been flat for so long. It's the big chase card from Lost Thunder, and it's a Lugia, right? Lugia is wildly popular. Again, another character that is a big alt art in the Sword and Shield space that is absolutely taking off. We've talked about, and we'll talk about it later, about how a big chase card in one era can have a direct effect on chase cards in another era. So really cool to see this card popping off, and we'll have to see if it can hold on to those gains. Next one right here, Forbidden Light and Ultra Prism, and Forbidden Light hasn't had the best run of it over the last 6 or 8 months. There's not a lot of big name Pokemon in there. There's no tag team cards in there. So when you think about where people are spending their money right now, not a lot of it's going into Forbidden Light. Ultra Prism, on the other side, had been performing really, really well. But my call out and my concern over Ultra Prism has been that is truly a trainer driven set. If you look at the top 20 cards in there, the top 6 are all trainer cards. And we've all noticed, and we've talked about a lot, how the trainer craze kind of came and then it's been fading out a little bit. But look, out of those top 6 cards, you have some significant gains there. Heck, one of them's up 28%. However, the big chase card has been dropping like a rock for quite a while. It is down 4% month over month. But when we look at it, which we're going to do right now, you might notice something that's interesting. Now, remember the pattern that we've seen in all of these other cards in the last couple slides that we've looked at. So here's the Lily card. This is the big chase card, the big trainer of the era, the big one from Ultra Prism. And you see this got all the way up to like $530 back in September, October, November of 2023. And ever since then, it's been working its way down. Now, it's too early to call this out, but look at how it started to flatten out there on the very, very far right? See how it hit that low point of about $380, and then it's just got this tiny little tail up there. And when we talk about support lines, I said, hey, listen, for whatever reason, round numbers seem to be, especially for big chase cards like this, round numbers like this seem to be some sort of support line. So in the back of my mind, I'm wondering like, hey, is this card going to find a lot of support at the $400 range? I don't know. I think $380 is still a whole lot of money to spend on a trainer, even though this card is an absolute stunner. The PSA 10 population is absolutely abysmal. Like, there is all kinds of things to love about this card. And just because the broader market, the broader trainer market has been through, you know, a little bit of a rough time, that doesn't mean that there won't be a couple trainers that absolutely buck the trend and outperform, right? We all know Cosmic Eclipse has got excuse me, a fire one at the top, and obviously this Rosie card right here is an absolute stunner as well. So are we going to see a support line form? Are we going to see this card get a little love right around the $400 mark? It's going to be really interesting to watch, and maybe if it starts to flatten out for a couple months, we can use our lessons from earlier in this video. If you've always wanted a Lily card and you've never been able to pull the trigger, and certainly a $500 price point scared you off, maybe you start putting your nickels away now because you think that, hey, if we find a decent support line, we could find a buying opportunity for this card sometime in the future. So really cool takeaway, and how this correlates to some of the other cards we've looked at in the rest of this video. Crimson Invasion and Burning Shadows, lots of lessons to be told here. Crimson Invasion kind of breaks my heart, right? We could actually have a Sun and Moon set with no cards over $30 in it. They are fighting really hard to stay up top. You'll see the top two cards right there. One was barely positive and the other one was up 1%. And Burning Shadows right there. Guess what? Burning Shadows is being driven all by that Charizard, and I love this. I actually talked about this in the last month's video, but I have to say it again. What a great example of how a big chase card with a really hard gem rate can absolutely drive the popularity and the collectability of a set like Burning Shadows. I think it's a great takeaway. And I did a poor comparison of this to Paldea Evolved because you can't compare the Magikarp card to a Charizard, right? You just can't. Charizard's always going to win. Burning Shadows is from a totally different era, but the gem rates are about the same. Both of them have absolutely abysmal gem rates. And I did say that at least the Paldea Evolved, from a support card perspective, I think like Paldea Evolved has a much better supporting cast. I think the set is more well-rounded versus Burning Shadows, which is really being driven by that Charizard at the top. But man, that card in a PSA 10, one just sold, I think, for $2,500. Absolutely crazy to think about how much that card is going for. And the booster boxes, even though it's just really driven by that one card, booster boxes is up at $423. Now, I talked about Crimson Invasion and how it's at the cusp of maybe not being the set with all the cards under $30, but we have one card which is trying to buck the trend. We have one card which is fighting hard, and here it is right here. The Gyarados EX has finally supplanted the trainer card that was at the very top there, and And again, when you look at it from a pricing perspective, it's another rainbow card here at the very top, down to $31.64. Not a great price graph, but we did have a new card at number 1, so I felt like I should at least call it out right here. Super cool to see this card. And at least the artwork's great. I like it. I'm not a huge rainbow fan, but overall, I still like the artwork on this card. Next one's right here, finishing it off, bringing us home. We got Guardian Risings and Sun and Moon. And guess what? Both of these sets have gone back to back to back with a positive gain in the top 20 singles cards, so 3 months in a row. And believe it or not, Sun and Moon base set is actually getting really hot here. Now, you see the top 10 across both sets have been having a lot of momentum, a lot of price growth there. But it's interesting because Sun and Moon has some really cool Umbreon cards in there, and I touched on it earlier, and I talk about it a lot on this channel about how sometimes a chase card from another era can kind of bleed through into others. And you've seen that Umbreon really across the board, trainer gallery Umbreons, you know, any kind of special art Umbreon, right? Like they all seem to be on fire right now, and I think it's simply because Evolving Skies is so hot, the Moonbreon is so hot, and so we're seeing it kind of transposed and into the downstream effect into sets like this. And it has been 2 months in a row. I actually featured this card last month as well because it started to break out. The price appreciation was so aggressive, I said, hey, maybe this could be a buyout, but guess what? We're 2 months into this thing shooting up like a rocket ship, so I don't think it's a buyout. I think people are just piling in on this. And remember, this is not the only Umbreon from Sun and Moon base set. There's another full art which is really, really stunning too. It's got some greens and some blacks to it. And again, I just really like the art on it. But this is a really cool takeaway. This whole Sun and Moon Umbreon thing, like these cards were flying under the radar for a very long time. Look, from June all the way till really February of 2024, I mean, this thing was a $35 card and it was stuck. It wasn't going anywhere. If it did anything, it was ticking its way down all across. And then all it took was that alt art space getting super crazy, people piling in under the Moonbreons and the trainer galleries, and guess what? This one took off like a rocket ship. So again, all of these things, all of these takeaways, all of these lessons, the whole purpose of this channel is for us to learn and for us to be able to play chess when everybody else is playing checkers. So I hope you find value in content like this. If you do and you enjoyed it, I really would love it if you hit the subscribe button. It goes a long way in helping my small channel out. If you enjoyed it, like I said, hit a thumbs up. And if you have questions or comments, though it might take me a bit to get back to them, drop them down below. All those things mean a lot to me. I appreciate them more than I can say. I hope you have an epic one, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.